welcome back to Sullivan's Backstage Pass. I'm here with Ken. Ken, thank you so much for being here. So I was perusing all of your content before we had this conversation. And the one thing that stood out to me that I really appreciate is that you have a lot of legit storytelling in your songs.
Yeah.
Is that something that's sort of always been with your music, or something you sort of picked up as you went along the way?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I sat down and started doing my very first songwriting, I was writing gospel music, right? I was writing we called it CCM, right? Contemporary Christian music. But I was writing religious music, and almost, many of the songs were just lifted. My first song that I remember sitting down and intentionally writing, I was 18 years old. It's called Simon's Song. I could still play it, so I still have it, set up in the noggin for play. But it's an old religious song, and it's the story of Simon the Cyrenian who carried the cross of Christ down the Via Dolorosa. Excuse me. And so many of those songs, I would tell stories from the Bible, and then I would be lining them up against the human experience in the modern day. And so I had songs about the Ark. I had songs about, Noah's Ark. I had songs about Abraham and Isaac. I had songs about, Moses and the children of Israel leaving Egypt. So all these storytelling songs. The last religious song I wrote was the story of the woman at the well that Jesus encountered. And so it was a deeply ingrained part of my songwriting experience when I was writing religious music. And then I put it aside when I left the ministry, and I came back to storytelling. I'd always wanted to be a writer. Ray Bradbury was my big hero when I was in high school and middle school. And so I had set that aside to go into the ministry. And then when I left the ministry, did some therapy, figured out, I think I need to go back to storytelling. So I started writing short stories, and eventually started seeing them come into print, put them in envelopes, send them to a magazine, wait for a rejection or maybe a check. And I did that for a while. And then I became that guy at book signings and at events where I remember a first convention, somebody put a guitar in my hand, and I took the room through American Pie. Nobody knew I could do that. And I suddenly remembered, oh, shit, I have this whole other pack of skills that will help me be me in the world. They're a part of me being me in the world. And so I should maybe reintegrate them. So I started bringing my guitar with me to writing events. And then in 2016, I went on hiatus. When I finished my big fantasy series with Tor, I took a break, decided, I'm going to only write a little bit now. And instead, I'm going to get the equipment. I'm going to go get the gear, get my Shure microphones, get my little, my Bose set up, and learn how to book gigs and learn how to play. I'm going to get out and start being a gigging, recording musician. And then once I had that all stood up, I slowly started integrating the writing stuff back in. And so, storytelling is just a theme that runs through me.
And has music been a part of your life, since you can remember? When did you first pick up a guitar in the first place?
So I picked up my first guitar when I was 17, but I had a harmonica by the time when I was 10. My granddad is the first live musician that I ever met. And Grandpa George, I'm Kenneth George Scholes, and he was George Alvord. And he had this natural musical aptitude. His grandpa actually has songs still that are published and out in the world that we can find if you look hard for them. And he started playing organ and piano on his mom's knee, harmonica, accordion. I have his piano and accordion at home. And so being around him, hearing him sing and play piano, he used to play church music on Sundays. He'd play Christmas music during the Christmas season. That really inspired me. And then seeing the live music down at the Pike Place Market when I was a little boy. One time only, come into the big city, see them playing, and I thought, whoa. But I started playing a harmonica, and then at 17, I picked up this Fender electric guitar. My folks had wanted to start this country band, and they bought all this gear, and then they started pawning it off as things weren't happening, right? It was failing. But they kept the Fender electric, nothing to plug it into, and I used my lawn mowing money to buy a Paul Simon songbook. And I started with Scarborough Fair, and started banging out, learning the chords. And then within a year of that, I was writing my own music and learning a lot of Paul Simon music, and John Denver and Peter, Paul and Mary and Creedence and the Beatles. And, eventually I built up quite a repertoire of covers that I often twist and reimagine up into something kind of a little different, and then my own stuff.
And one of the things that I also appreciate about you as a musician is that you have the ability to have a smooth, silky voice and then also have a little rasp at times.
That might be because of allergies.
Fair enough.
Sometimes it could also be maybe sometimes, but sometimes, yeah, I don't know if I control it as much. But sometimes it's just the passion of the song takes my voice in the directions it wants to go, and it depends on the key I pick.
And I love that. So, like, as you're picking up the guitar, then and you're sort of getting around, like, did you ever make it back and perform at Pike Place?
No, but it's a funny thing. I signed up to you have to take a little class to do that, and I signed up to do it, and then I threw my back out. Now, I don't know if we talked about this, but in September, I threw my back out. I had a herniated disc, a degenerative disc, all the stuff, all the bad things. Hunched over, walking on a walker and a cane, and just 7 weeks ago, I had surgery. And suddenly I'm walking upright. I'm able to stand and perform like I was playing the guitar before the podcast. For the longest time, I could only sit. I couldn't stand for more than about a minute or two. And so I had to cancel the class that I was going to take. But it is back on the list. I'm going to be playing the Pike Place Market at some point.
See, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, close the circle out, right?
Yeah.
I've also gone back to my hometown and played the farmers market there, and I went back to my hometown and that area of my hometown for book events and things. So, I went back to my alma mater, Western, and left all of my books, and then played a gig out in Nooksack where my grandfather grew up, and that was cool to be able to play music in the same area where he would have been playing music as a young guy.
And so when you're talking about, like, you're picking up your guitar, like, and so in your sort of development years, was there a point you started to recognize that you might be interested in performing on stage?
Oh, no, I only picked it up because I had to perform. And I had to perform because I had been called to preach, right? I had this strong, compelling enough that I was not going to be a writer anymore, and that I was digging down deep into a fundamental, really kind of alarming version of, people can pick a religion that's nice. And you can also pick a religion that's really awful. And I was kind of going down the not great road of picking. And, but it seemed to me that I was a very shy person. I was in choir, but I didn't do solos, right? I was in choir, I had everybody else's voice around me. And one deciding factor was my spring of my junior year, just before all of this, or do I say, yeah, it was my junior year. Before the calling and before giving up the writing, I got an opportunity to do a duet with Jenny Thomas. And Jenny Thomas played guitar. She had taught herself, and we did Sounds of Silence for the school at the big concert. And it went amazingly well. And I remember her saying to me, Ken, if I could teach myself to play guitar, so could you. And then I had this whole experience where I felt like I had to become a preacher. And because of that, and I was super shy, I knew I had to get out of my way, and that I was going to have to be up in front of people and learn things. And so when I picked up a guitar, I was also learning the gospel music. I was learning, first song I wrote was a religious song. I was learning hymns so that I could lead music. And by the time I was a pastor, I was also the worship leader of the church. And I also, when I went and did shows, there would always be a component of worship as a part of the show. And usually I'd have a sermon of some kind in the show. Now I read a short story maybe, or, do different things, or maybe preach the good news of we the people in order to form a more perfect union.
Yeah.
I always knew that I would be out performing, and I started on the streets of Germany, Stuttgart, Germany, with a guitar that I bought when I landed over there at 18 years old. I went out, bought a guitar, had a coat hanger and some black electrical tape to get my harmonica rigged up, because I didn't know I didn't know what to do. And I started singing on street corners. And
how did you end up in Germany, of all places?
I was a military kid. I joined the military, right? 17 years old. All the things that hit me at 17, I picked up a guitar. I picked up a Bible. I picked up a guitar. And then I signed a contract to join the United States Navy Reserve. And I went off to boot camp just before I finished my junior year of high school. I shipped out to San Diego for boot camp. And just after my senior year started, I showed back up in my Navy blues. And then I swapped out. I jumped into the Army at the end of my senior year, and I had the summer, and then I was off to Germany, in the winter.
Where were you stationed, if you don't mind me asking?
I was stationed just outside Stuttgart, Germany, a little village called Kornwestheim. And now we were in old German army barracks, but now those have been turned into housing. We're not. When I was there, the size of our occupational force there, with the Soviet Union and the Czech border right there, it was pretty significant. I was there, of course, during peacetime, but we were an occupying force in Germany, in West Germany at the time. It was prior to the wall coming down.
Yeah, I served in Baumholder, Germany from 1998 to 2000.
All right, yeah.
And that was after the wall came down. and we were still sort of reeling the effects of that. But
Oh, I'm betting it was a wildly different Germany.
it was a very interesting
You,
time.
when did unification happen? Were you there before it or
Unification
after?
happened before I was there.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was in the Bundesrepublik of Deutschland, right, the West German,
Yeah.
and we still had East Germany and East Berlin and West Berlin.
And I think mine was a few years after the wall came down, but I did take a trip to Berlin.
Yeah.
And even though it had come down 4 years, you could still see the stark difference of where the wall was,
Yeah.
just in the design of the buildings,
Oh, yeah.
the way the roads were laid out. It was just like you were entering into a different country, even though it was just the other side of the city.
And now it's like a bizarre form of time travel to even think about. Because I remember going to the border and skiing across into the eastern, into Czechoslovakia that we looked into. But yeah, no, it's a long time ago. But I came home from there, and then I started preaching. And then and by that time I had a body of work as a Christian musician. So I was kind of in these tiny Southern Baptist churches in the Pacific Northwest, where we were talking, if they had 100 people, they were a huge church.
Yeah.
If they had 10 or 15 or 20, that was about the right normal size. And so these little churches, they ate me up as a 20-something, with my guitar and my suits, and at camp I was in camo pants, and I mean I was kind of this young 20-something guitar slinging preacher boy, and while trying to get through college so that I could ultimately go to seminary. But I'm glad that direction shifted for me.
And you have this other fascinating aspect of your life of being a writer.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that with your background as a writer, it also helps with the songwriting piece.
Well,
right?
I mean, I did a lot of, I wrote my first, dozen or so short stories while I was in high school. And then I wrote my first probably 30, 40, well, probably close to 100. I don't remember all of the religious songs I wrote, but I had close to 100 when I quit. And so I did a lot more songwriting than story writing, in my earlier days. And then when I came back to the storytelling, and for me, it's a lot, songs go way faster for me. It's slow in the sense that it sits in the crock pot, and then eventually it's ready. Like earlier, I played Bible Belt Blues, and that's a song where I had the riff for the longest time. I had the first and second stanza for the longest time. The harmonica solo was easy, but the last stanza is what brought it all together. And that, of course, was something I wrote in response to the Alabama riot that happened, where people were taking folding chairs to the white supremacists that were trying to hurt that black guy that moved the boat. He moved somebody's boat. It was his job to move their boat, and a bunch of white supremacists pounced him. And then a flood of black people showed up to defend him. And that marked me for a song. I started thinking about my day as a little white boy preacher in my little white boy church, and how Jesus is going to come back and take care of us. And I thought, Jesus is going to come back. Now I understand it. If he'd come back to my church, he'd been bringing a whip. He wouldn't have come back to my church and said, "Hey, well done, my good and faithful servant." He would have come back and said, "Why are you hating on people that I love? Why are you hating on anybody that I love? I love everybody. What about you?"
Yeah, my fear would be if Jesus did come back, that we would treat him like the way we treat people who are poor in this country altogether.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I ever tackle that, and I probably will at some point in my science fiction writing day, I've got some ideas around that I think I'll be exploring. But
that would be a cool book.
They've done it. Some people have done it before. James Morrow did a really good trilogy of books that starts with Towing Jehovah. And he has a trilogy, and one of the books is about God's only begotten daughter, who shows up in the 20th century and discovers things aren't much better.
So as you're performing in today's sort of, words are hard sometimes, as somebody who's performing, what is it about the live performance that you love so much?
Connecting. It's like there's a moment of when you make music, you are all together in one space. As a matter of fact, if you listen to Harry Chapin's song, Remember When the Music, it'll tell you why we do it, exactly why we do it. It's all for the theme of that song. But when we're together in that space, we are that mood. We are the mood of that song. We are one in the spirit, so to speak, or can be. Not everybody is in there, right? Not everybody's here. Some people are here, but not here. We're all on a spectrum, but the people that are closest to the end of that spectrum are children. When I play bars, it's a whole different kind of connecting than when I play a farmer's market. When I play a farmer's market, it's the little kids. that you just they make eye contact with you, and they maintain that eye contact with you until they can't see you anymore, and they are absolutely in the moment of that song. And if they have attentive parents, the parents will stop and they'll give them $1 to put in, and they'll hang out for a couple songs. And if I know that if the parents stop, then I know to shift into ABC and Twinkle Twinkle and do the kids songs, right? But it's connection. Yeah. And I'll play anywhere. I'll even still play church. If church wanted me to come hear my music, I don't have to preach. I can go and just be the music. And but I'll play and sing anywhere. But the big difference between like the writing and the singing is that when I write, I also connect with people, but I do the thing alone. And then I put the thing out here, and it takes however long to go through the publishing trammel, right? It eventually comes out into the world. If it's a novel with my publisher, it's a year. Short story collection could be about the same once I have enough material built up. And so, but I do all of that alone in the dark. And then somebody reads it alone in the dark. And they say, oh my, I feel so connected to this story. And they might send me a note. Most of the time they don't. If I sing a song, it's instant gratification. It's instant connection. It's us together in one space. And I like that. I like both. I enjoy both experiences. And so I'll grab them and take them when I can.
And so as a musician up on stage and you're looking out into the crowd, what are some of the things...
You said crowd. Yeah. I've had a crowd a few times, but...
But I'm serious. Like, you're looking out into the audience, and outside of dancing, what are some of the signs you're looking for
eye contact
to let people know that they like what they're hearing?
Usually there's eye contact. Usually there's smiles. Sometimes there's $20 bills coming up into the tip jar, right? I mean, it's... sometimes it's a word afterwards. Sometimes it's a word on the set break. But usually you can tell who's there and into it. And then you can tell which ones, and when I'm playing in the night crowd, like a bar, then I mix it up usually a lot more, a mix of my stuff and covers, because I want them to hear songs that are familiar to them. But I also am really enjoying just going and playing my own stuff now and being able to tell the story. When I do that, I have this box, and I have my books, and I have all the different hats I've worn in my life, and I have my gigantic yellow plastic cat that I make people try and guess what it is. It's a gigantic yellow plastic cat. Yes, but where did I get it, and what's it represent?
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
You have to go to a show and check out this dude's cat before he'll let you know.
Exactly. And I talk about the 4 reasons I picked up a guitar, right? 1, to bring glory to the Lord, because that's what I was doing at the time, right? 2, to play the music of Paul Simon. Oh, I forgot the first reason I picked up guitar, because it was lighter than a piano, but bump. And then the last reason, of course, I picked up a guitar was to woo women. So I bet through my shows, when I'm doing my own thing, I'll usually mix in it somewhere. I'll do, remember the 4 reasons why I play guitar. Oh yeah, Okay, well now I'm going to do one of those Ushy Gushy love songs. Now I'm going to do a Paul Simon song. Or hey, I'm going to do one of my old religious songs now. And so it gives people kind of an anchor point to a journey. We're going on a trip together. When you do a Ken Scholes show, if it's not a bar show, or a farmer's market show where it's just a passing audience, if I'm in a place where I'm sitting with people and they're coming for an hour and a half, 2 hours of music with me, then we have a complete experience of that. And I set up my little table and put on different hats at different times. During King's Day, I sang the preamble to the Constitution from Schoolhouse Rock, and talked about my military service and how the oath that I swore. I didn't understand it at 18 or 17.
Oh, that's the truth.
But at 58, I understand what it means now.
Yeah.
I understand that I'm holding space. I understand now that even though maybe us old, well-established American white folk don't like to think about it, we're all immigrants. And there's only one group of people here who really gets to get all bent out of shape about what we do with America, and they're the folks we took it from. So I have pretty strong vibe, about that stuff now, and I build it into my life and my songs, and I try to wander and be Ken.
And I appreciate that perspective, right? Because I love people who aren't attached to ideas when new information comes along. And I do think that this world would be a better place if more people had that sort of philosophy in life. Because, 100 years ago, they thought the earth rotated around the sun. So, when new information comes available, whether that's science, religion, whatever, I'm the kind of person who's like, okay, I want to know more. Because I just want to make sure I get it right.
I mean, our understanding is this interesting thing. There's no ceiling on how high it can go, but we can hold it down with the stupid things that we believe, and we can hold it down with when we are unwilling to look at something different or new. New and different can be scary and dangerous, and I definitely, for me at this point, I've experienced this complete transformation from a really crappy worldview and a really problematic belief system to one that's emotionally healthy, that, I understand now that I need a tribe of people, and that that there are tools that I can use to build my life better and to help other people build their lives, and that I need to use my talent in the world. That everybody has things that they can do that nobody else can do like them. And if everybody just did their things for their people, what would the world be?
Right. And I like that you brought that up. It's kind of one of the reasons I started this podcast, is because I was at conflict. And I was in this internal conflict because what I was seeing on TV and the media is not what I was seeing with my neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so we have all of this like vitriol and hatred towards each other that you see posted out there. But then I started having people come on the podcast, people who are religious, people who aren't religious, people who have this view, people who have this. And one thing that we all have in common, we're human.
We are. And that means that we are prone to believing silly things.
Yeah.
And prone to not knowing that. And we're an unreliable narrator of our experience a lot of the time, but we think that we know exactly what's going on. I know.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun. I have discovered that there's tremendous freedom, and I don't mean the term in religious terms, though it is a religious term, I guess, or I guess it's an unreligious term, but agnosticism is great freedom. To recognize the power of I don't know. I don't need to know. I don't think you know either. It's okay if you think you know. I don't have to tell you that I don't think you know. You can just think you know, as long as it's not hurting me. But I understand now that the power of I don't know is vast. The power of I'm sorry is pretty vast. The power of I was wrong about that is really vast. And those are three wells that we don't like to go to, but there's a lot of traction for a good life.
Yeah, there's another one too that I'm going down recently. This path of affirmations over praise.
Yeah.
One of the things that I realize in life is that we focus a lot on praise, which is really telling you that I think you did something right.
External validation.
By my standards, instead of acknowledging what somebody's gone through and say, hey, I think that's amazing that you got through that accident and now you're standing up tight. Like, that's freaking huge. That's a lot of sacrifice. It goes way better than, I'm proud of you for this, or I'm proud of you for that.
No, that is good. I think that's a nice distinction.
But going back to the music, though, so I don't want to get on too many of my soapboxes today.
No, soapboxes are what life is made of. I write songs about soap.
I love it. So when you're playing, do you normally have a set list? Or are you beating?
Sometimes I do, and a lot of times I just kind of get caught up in the mood. I mean, if there are songs that I really want to make sure I get to, then I might, or if I'm really like in a place where I've got to be careful of time, I may, but no, typically I kind of get into a state of flow and just flow along. I have to change that up if I'm playing with other people, though, right? Because they like to know what they're going to play next. And though there was a guy I played with for a while who was pretty awesome at being just follow along. And but mostly I'm a solo act anyway, so.
But that's a good question, though, because one of the things I love to ask every musician that comes on here is, why do you think it's important that as fellow musicians come and play with you, that they have this level of respect and professionalism?
Well, I mean, for me, my biggest thing is if people want to play music with me, they need to be living a mindfully healthy life at some level, right? My problem with playing with people is that I played with a couple of people who they had addiction issues, they had mental health issues, they weren't dealing with them in an effective way. You cannot hold space for others effectively. If my goal in music isn't just to entertain, but to hold space and create kind of a fulcrum of emotion where they can experience a full range of humanity in an evening, well, I want people that are helping me do that are not like drunk off their ass, I've just had some really interesting situations, and I'd rather play alone than deal with that. But at the same time, I would like to, I'd love to find other mindful, maybe ex-church kids, ex-worship leaders, people who would like to form an ensemble, not necessarily a band, but when we four come together, we are mighty, right? And then we do our thing, but we come together, we're mighty. A hand drummer, a keyboardist, maybe a violinist or a cellist.
Find a Zen drummer.
A Zen drummer, yeah, exactly. And I put out ads and things at different places. It's not happened yet. Now, but I believe all of life is connected. We all came from one single cell organism that got haunted somehow, right? And so I think that just by saying it, talking to you, getting to know our friend here, Sing Acoustic.
Sing Acoustic. Great,
this Sing Acoustic is an amazing place. And I sang 3 songs in here just as we were warming up. This has got such a warm vibe. So anyway, I think that, but I lost my thread for a second there.
No, that's all right. We were talking about like the importance of like getting people together.
Yeah, and I think that it's, if I'm going to cast that spell in a room, the people doing it with me need to be with me. And I have not had I've met a guy recently that I think we'll do great together if we get to the point where we can jam and do whatnot. We just haven't had a chance yet. But I am at the point now where I'm not roaming as much. I'm staying more local. I'm interested in finding a group of people that I could keep playing with. I've written enough songs that I think we could have a good run at it if we find the right mix of folks. But so you can help. People. You can send people my way that you think vibe went my direction.
And people listening as well, like if you're vibing on with what our conversation is today, feel free to reach out. We'll get to your socials near the end. But,
absolutely.
So when I'm talking to musicians and everything, the other thing I love to ask is from a musician's perspective. Mm-hmm. What are some I believe that the muse is a living and breathing thing, mm-hmm. and you never know when she's going to visit you. Mm-hmm. So what do you do when the muse visits you? How do you capture her?
Oh, here, I figured it out. I keep music. I am the goose that lays the golden eggs. I'm that goose. And once I figured out that I was the goose, right, I know how to do it. Whether it's a song or a story, I know where to go, what to do, sit down with it, be with it. For me, it's a water faucet now, right? I either turn it on or I don't. And if you said, Ken, I've been thinking it'd be nice to have a new song, something about what I do, this unheard voices. Could you write a song about unheard voices? I totally could. I could sit down, I could write that song, I could come back to you, I could sing you that song, and then I'd have a new song. I've written plenty of songs for preachers who wanted songs for their sermons. And it's just a faucet. Same with a story. You came to me, if you were an editor, and said, yep, I'm going to do the Unheard Voices anthology. And I was going to be all 10 short stories about unheard voices. And whatever it is that you want to imagine. And I'm like, okay, I'll go write you a story about unheard voices. And I would go off and find a tree, or I'd go find a spider's web, and I'd plug myself back into nature. And I would remind my body that I am a part of all of this. And then my body will do the thing it needs to do.
So as you turn the faucet on, mm-hmm. does it normally come to you with like riffs first, with like a verse first, or do you think like in lyrics then music, or is it like a combination?
It could be anything. I never know. Sometimes I get a riff and then I'll record that riff when I get it. I have my phone is full of all kinds of voice recorders of new song 2, new song, new song. And I don't know because I'm not in a stage of my life where I'm working hard at the spigot, right? I'm at a stage of my life where I'm working hard to set up gigs. I'm trying to get the writing side of my life up because I've been working the music now for a decade. So I'm working on a novella. I'm working on a family genealogical project. I think my genealogy project, The Ghosts in My Bones, is going to have a musical component to it because it really started as me kind of trying to trace both the terrible things in my family and the talent that runs through my family, to trace some of that and to get a sense of where we all came from. And so there are a lot of stories in the 16 great-great-grandparents that came west.
And I'm a huge proponent of musical journeys.
Yeah.
Like albums that tell a story all the way through. So
I think this is going to be both. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm eager to see what comes out of that because it sounds like that's a creative idea to be able to bridge the two.
I think what it's going to be is a combination of some music, some acoustic guitar music, and I probably will throw in one of my great-great-grandfather's songs. And then probably maybe an Annie Dillard style narrative, because so much of my family, I was a preacher. Well, apples didn't fall too far from trees. I scratch the surface, and I'm a family full of renegades who came west to escape persecution from various, because they all joined different strange movements that didn't fit the modern sense of what you're supposed to be now. And then everybody, the villagers grab their pitchforks and rocks. And so we're going west. And so a whole ton, a river, Quakers and Puritans and Mormons and Baptists. I think finding some free thinkers. Free thinkers didn't get a good rap back in the day either. I don't believe in any of that stuff. You're dead now. But yeah, so I think it'll be a combination of both. But I don't know. Right now, my high priority project is this novella that I have that's set in the universe of my science fiction and fantasy series with Tor. And then I have an option in my 5-book contract with Tor. There's a 6-book option that I haven't exercised yet. And I've got that new series kind of slowly picking up. So I'm, juggling a bunch of different things as my kids get ready. They're starting their senior year next week. So, I mean, I'm ending a chapter as they get ready to finish high school and go to college. And I'm going to be doing this new chapter of whatever that looks like.
So if you're thinking about like the recent sort of like last couple of years, can you remember a performance off the top of your head where you got done and you were like, that's perfect?
I mean, they all are perfect. It's not because of the quality of it. It's because of the experience. It's a perfect experience, even when things go wrong, even when it does, But I mean, my life is full of these, what I would call perfect moments. And I would say, and this is actually on my YouTube channel, my McMiniman show at the Grand Lodge on No King's Day in October. My back was out. It's the first time I performed on my ergonomic stool. I did my setup. It was brutal, but I recorded all 3 sets, and it's pretty, came out, the sound was okay. And it was where I was first test driving the gigantic yellow plastic cat and all of those things. And so, yeah, I mean, that one comes to mind most, but I don't know. I mean, there were these perfections during the pandemic when I figured out, oh my goodness, I can do streaming I can't play it out in the world now, but I can play online.
Yeah.
And I learned, and then I started with my phone and a tripod. Thought, this guy is so big, I do that. And then I had a dedicated landline and a dedicated studio, and I had OBS and all these things. And then at the end of the day, I came back to my guitar and my tripod because I could go anywhere, and it was easy. And simplicity sometimes is where we should really land.
Yeah, and I made that same sort of stumbling across this podcast in different variations of picking a microphone and like, oh, that sounds terrible, but you wasted $140 you didn't have.
Wasn't a waste. It was a learning. It was a $140 lesson.
lesson.
Yep,
right?
Exactly. I have a lot of equipment I bought as a part of my business that I don't ultimately end up using much. But.
And then in terms of like musicians, so like one of the things that I like to ask people is in reference to like newer musicians that are up and coming. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to those musicians so that they don't give up? Because this is a hard industry to get into.
I mean, I guess I would tell them, be clear in your mind what you want and why you're doing it. Because at this point in my life, I don't find all reasons to be equal. And I tell people that want to be writers the same thing. You figure out what you want your career to look like, what you are going to do. I'm not trying to be a musician. I'm just trying to be Ken. And Ken he's a singer-songwriter who tells stories about life and loss and love and learning how to move forward when we're stuck. And Ken tells stories and writes stories, and Ken tries to help people along the way. So I always have, classes that or coaching I'm willing to do. I ran nonprofit organizations for a decade that did community economic development. So I can sit down and coach business owners or artisans on how to kind of maximize their effectiveness. So I have all these different things that I do, but I'm not doing any of it with the intention of getting rich. I'm not doing it so that I become famous. I had a little taste of what 15 minutes feels like when my books were really popular for a few years, and it was okay. I don't need to live there. I would not ever want to be Paul McCartney. I mean, I love Paul Simon and I love Paul McCartney's music. I love everything that they've done, but I wouldn't want to be them. Yeah. I wouldn't want that. That comes with a lot. Now, I mean, if life made me that, I'd suck it up, Buttercup. Yeah. But the reality is that I just want to be a guy who loves his kids and uses his talent in the world for good. I want to constantly remember where I come from, both the tragic childhood circumstances that led to the complex PTSD that has shaped so much of my life, and where I come from as far as the ridiculous beliefs that CPTSD took me into, thinking I was on a life preserver keeping me safe and others safe, when in reality I was avoiding trauma and avoiding the healing that needed to happen inside of me. And so, staying mindful that I used to weigh 370 pounds, and now I'm down like over 100 and some pounds, and I've done a big chunk of that recently. So that's been a pretty good thing. I mean, my doctor we had a scolding. I have this new doctor. She's like a little older than my kids. And she put me on a statin, and that I saw risk of heart attack and stroke, and I got scolded for not taking my BP, my blood pressure medicine, all these things. So about a year and a half or so ago, I decided it was time to get mindful about that again. And so, all these things, I don't know. I figured out about 10 years ago that all I need to ever do is just be me. But the me that I can be is a lot bigger than just my job or writing books or writing. It's the sum total of all of the things I do, because I'm also still kind of a shepherd at heart. I'm still, I'm kind of everybody's dad, plus.
Yeah, so I would say, and let me throw this out there and correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like you still have your love for fellow man that you had as a religious person. You just let go of the structure of organized religion.
Well, and I don't believe in any of the gods that people proclaim today, and I don't believe that they really know either. They just think that, just like I thought I knew. I was absolutely convinced. I mean, I was marching for Jesus. I was a promise keeper. I was all the things, and I knew. And if you said to me, "Oh, you just think you know," nope, I know. And unfortunately, you don't seem to know. I'm not better than you. I'm just better off than you. And so, I had all of that programming in me. But no, I don't believe any of that. But I don't think we need to. I think that even Jesus showed up, and even Buddha showed up and said, treat people the way that you want to be treated. I mean, it was not, Jesus didn't come here to start a religion. He really started a movement. He started this is how we could be in the world together if we really understood. And a lot of the message of that has been co-opted by religion. A lot of it's been co-opted by very, very diligent followers who made sure that the real things he said were underlined and highlighted and added to, as opposed to just left alone, so that we could, find that. When they looked at the Gospel of Thomas and realized that it wasn't actually the horrible thing they thought it was, and that we'd not even seen it because it had been kept from us, from the canon of Scripture. So no, I'm truly kind of I'm an agnostic, but I love humanity. I love life. It's not just humans. I take the spiders out of my house now. I mean, if I don't have to kill a spider, I don't kill a spider. I draw the line at ants and mice, but I guess my buddy Jay Lake, who passed about a dozen years ago, he said that I was a compassionate secular humanist, and I'd never thought of myself as that before until I thought, well, humanists believe in humanity, and I'm more of a lifeist now. I like life. I love the fact that we got haunted on this rock, and that I love the moss. I feel like it's I have cousinship with the moss and the birds and the spiders and you. If I have cousinship with moss, what are you? Well, you're my brother. You're my family. And so we all ought to figure out how to do that better.
Yeah, it's like when I first moved into my house, the most upsetting thing to me was that I couldn't hear any birds.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, no.
I have birds on my back porch with my coffee.
Yeah, I put out bird feeders. The neighbors aren't too happy, I'm sure, but at the same time, like, I want those birds. I want to plant the plants that the bees love. Like, I want to do what I can to give back to the life that is provided for me along the way.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is that, and this is like something that, especially like in the disability circles that I'm in, if you do things to help people at the bottom, it lifts everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the part that just like confuses me in some of the conversations that we have, because like we're lifting people out of the bottom to be more successful, and the more people that are successful, the more everybody wins. And so I always had that humanistic approach, but I think I finally have kind of a name for it, because I never heard that before. So thank you.
You're welcome. No, it's I think that there are so many isms. There's so many isms out there, but ultimately, I think if we can be compassionate and open and integrate all of the things that are true about us, even the things we don't like, even the things that are ugly, the good, the bad, and the ugly make us who we are.
Yeah.
And a radical acceptance of ourselves, which is really just what love is. Love is radical acceptance. And if we don't figure out how to do that for ourselves, we don't know what to do with other people who try to radically accept us.
And it's an interesting life lesson in kindness.
Yeah.
Because what I have learned through my life is if you lead with kindness, kindness comes back.
I think so.
If you lead with anger and animosity, it's very likely the only thing coming back is anger and animosity.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then in terms of like going back to the writing piece of it, because I'm fascinated about how you got into science fiction in general. Was that like a story that just came to you? Had that been percolating for years? Or
So so it started with cartoons, right? I mean, story, right? Sucking in story, drinking it. Speed Racer, Adam West is Batman, so that was live action. Time Tunnel. All these shows that were on, because I couldn't read. And I watched Land of the Lost, all these amazing, shows. There's a Flash Gordon cartoon when I was a kid. And then in second grade, I got a couple of science fiction juvenile books. One was called Runaway Robot by Jack Williamson, and the other was called, Runaway Robot, I think, was Lester Del Rey, and then Trapped in Space was by Jack Williamson. And they were the first two science fiction books I read. And I was in second grade, and I read one of them up in a tree. And I remember it was life-changing. And after that day, I was never to be found without a book or a stack of books. And I started reading everything: science fiction, fantasy, mystery, everything. A voracious reader. By fourth grade, I was reading Stephen King. And by the time I was in middle school, I read an essay by Ray Bradbury, I think it was in 8th or 9th grade, called How to Keep and Feed a Muse. And that essay was in a school book that somebody loaned me that I still have. I didn't give back the book. And now inside of that school book, I have my letters from Ray Bradbury, because I wrote to him when I was 16 and said, I want to be like you when I grow up. And he wrote back and told me what to do. And he said, write 1,000 words a day, go buy these books and read them. By the time, you've written your first 1,000,000 words, you'll be there. And then he invited me to write him every year. And I did. And I got a couple of letters from him until I had my big experience. And I decided the next thing I should probably do is make sure Ray Bradbury understood how he could get Jesus in his heart to save him from his sins. So I sent him that letter, and I didn't hear from him after that. But I started doing before that, I had started writing the stories, submitting the stories. I took typing in high school so that I could write stories. And I was writing stories that were kind of science fiction-y, kind of horror-y, kind of little mix, because that's what I was consuming. I was a big D&D geek, all those things, comic book kid, Star Trek, Star Wars. And then I left it all. And then when I came back to it, it was a slog. It takes an average about 100 rejections. Nowadays, people just publish when they want to publish. So you're independent publishing, you don't have that process. When I was doing this, that didn't exist, and it would have been the kiss of death. You couldn't self-publish. It was considered a vanity press kind of thing. And so
So how the heck do you get it published if you can't self-publish?
You go to the magazines that publish short stories, and you write short stories, and you put them in envelopes, and you mail them out. And then it became email. You'd email them out, and an editor at that magazine says, "Oh, dear Mr. Scholes, thank you for letting me see this. It doesn't quite work for us. Please send us another." And I just did that and did that and did that and did that. And then one day, one of the editors, Patrick Swenson, had a magazine called Tailbones. And I would go to him first because he was the first editor to take emailed submissions. And that meant I could get rejected really fast and get it on to the next market, because it was a game, a numbers game. Get it out to as many markets as possible. I don't know how good it is. How could I know? So I'll send it out and let the editor decide. And then one day I came to my mail, and there was an envelope from Tailbones magazine. And I thought, well, he sends rejections by email, but he would have to send a check in an envelope. So I was nervous. I opened it up. Nope. It was an invitation to attend a writing class that he and his wife were going to teach in Seattle. And I was like, that's a good idea. I want to sell this guy a story. He wants me to take a class where I'm going to write 6 stories, and he's going to tell me how to write the kind of story that gets sold. This sounds like a good idea. So I took his class. And then I took his class again. And in the second class, I wrote a story. All the way through, I was getting a lot of the praise and the validation and those things. And my new writing friends were coming to the class with me. And I wrote a story, and then Patrick said, if you can't sell it to the higher paying markets and you must send it to them first, send it to me. I would be interested in this one. And that ended up, ultimately, it went around all the big places, and then I sent it to Patrick. And in winter of 2000, my very first short story, The Taking Night, came out. And oddly enough, it was based on memories from my life as a child, dressed up around, an old man in a nursing home who has discovered that he's got to miss his granddaughter going into space, and he's never going to see her again because she's going so far into space that by the time she comes back, it'll have been a dozen years, and he's on his last legs. And so, but it's about him breaking out of the hospital to go watch her take off for space. And that was my first sale, and then it took a year or so, but I sold another, and then I sold another, and then in 2005, I won a contest called Writers of the Future, and that got me my first big elevated sale, my first big paycheck. And then the next big sale after that was the short story that ended up becoming my 5-book series with Tor. I took 2 short stories and then filled in the middle, and then that first novel became 5. And so that's how that all started. But it started with short stories, and it started with me throwing them at the wall and seeing what would stick through that very, very painful, long process of submitting and getting rejected and submitting and getting rejected.
At the same time, though, I appreciate the commitment. And I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of people may not appreciate. Because, yes, you can write your own thing and self-publish, but to get out there and to have some modicum of success is a hard work behind it.
There is.
A lot of people aren't willing to do.
It's very true. And when you're self-publishing, you're taking all of that on. And if you don't have those connections, if you don't have that kind of distribution, I know people that are very successful self-published writers who came in raw with nothing and started just as indie writers. I also know a lot of very successful self-published writers who had a whole body of traditionally published books that had been returned to them, got their rights back years and years and years ago, and that's just sitting. Putting that out makes total sense. I have self-published a few things, but I still start at the traditional end because usually there's more money and less work. I mean, if I publish it myself, I got to pick the cover, I got to market, I got to do all the things. If I do it through a publisher, they're covering those things.
And then what about the relationship between the publisher and the author? Is because I always thought of it, because the way you see it in TV, it's almost more of like an adversarial relationship.
Some writers make it that way. I don't think the publishers do. I don't think the publishers do, but I've known enough writers that writers are a squirrely lot, and I've heard stories of how writers react to publishers about their covers or about different things, and I found that a modicum of kindness and respect goes a long way. My big thing was I'm not going to ever complain about my cover because I'm just lucky that I get to have a cover. And I don't want to pick my own covers. I don't want to be an art director. I want to be a writer. I don't want to be a publisher. I want to be a writer. And I wanted the gatekeeping experience. I wanted somebody else to decide when my work was ready for prime time.
And I was a journalist for about a decade, and one of the things that taught me was to not have any emotional attachment to your writing when an editor comes back with changes.
I mean, I still have some emotional attachment.
Right, that's fair.
Some, but not a lot. And honestly, my editor at Tor, who's retired now, she worked with me on my 5 novels. She was amazing. I called her the Ken Whisperer. And I had an unusual relationship with her because I gave her my book chapter by chapter. Most writers finish the book, fix the book, give the book over. I gave it to her chapter by chapter because I needed her to constantly tell me I was doing okay. Because I did not want to be a novelist. And then I became a novelist. And so for 5 years, or for 5 books, I had her eye on every word, 750,000 words. And she was right, I think, every time. I mean, there were a few times when I would not change things, but most of the time she was absolutely knew exactly what she thought. And even the times that I didn't change it, I think she might have still been right.
And I like that perspective of having that sort of safe person to sort of look at things along the way, because we are our own worst critics. We are so much harder on ourselves than anyone else will ever be on us. And so that's the other thing that I wanted to hear from artists on this podcast is how important is it to ignore the negative feedback?
Oh, the negative feedback from yourself, you should absolutely. If you're getting negative feedback from others, well, if it's a reviewer and it's a bad review of your book, their opinion of my book's none of my business. I mean, because honestly, what are they doing? They're writing words about somebody else's words. Okay, cool. You can enjoy that. But your opinion about... Now, on the other hand, when they love my work, well, they're brilliant, obviously. They must be on the cutting edge of literary know-how for them to love my... But, I mean, it's a game, ultimately, because qualia is qualia. Some people just don't like peanut butter. Some people don't like rap. Some people don't like opera. And some people do. And it's okay, you know. And a lot of people, what bothers me is when people decide that the problem is in the work instead of in their eyes. Instead of understanding it's just not their cup of tea. Don't make yourself read something you don't like and then write a review about how terrible it is. If you don't like something, it might just be that you don't like peanut butter. And maybe you should go have chocolate.
And that's a huge important, because that applies to music too, right? I believe that while I also believe that there's no such thing as a poor book, there's no such thing as a bad song. It's a song some people love, some people may not love. And if it's music, that's good enough for me. Because music is one of those interesting things about being human that welcomes everybody. It's a universal language that doesn't care who you are, what your background is, what you like. That is not that leaves the door the minute the music starts playing.
Yep, it's the universal language of connection.
Yeah,
and how to connect in an instant with another human. I mean, it happened during the Second World War. I think it was the Second World War when Christmas came and the Germans started singing Silent Night in German, and the American soldiers started singing Silent Night in English, and they were together in one space, and suddenly it was Christmas Eve and not World War II.
And then there's that whole thing about stopping the war for the wolves. Oh, you didn't know about that.
I probably knew about it, but don't remember because of...
So at some point in the war, there were too many soldiers on both sides being killed by wolves. And so there was a ceasefire, and the German soldiers and the American soldiers together on the same side, standing next to each other, focused, I can't remember how long, on killing the wolves.
All right.
And once that situation was resolved, they went back to killing each other.
We are a wacky species.
Yes, we are.
And then we are very point and click. We are capable of change in the moment. We just don't like it sometimes.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because this day and age, the only constant is change.
It is. It always was. I mean, that's how we got
fair.
here. That's how we got here. We are a process of billions of years of change.
Yeah.
You know, a heuristic process of this change didn't work out. Well, the dinosaurs are gone. Well, we got chickens, though. So that's nice. I mean, really, dinosaurs are gone, but we got chickens, and chickens are good. I mean, you can eat them, you can pet them, you can race them.
Live off just their eggs.
Yep, live off their eggs, I suppose. Yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah, be tough, but you can't.
Right, exactly. I think that that's very true.
And so, as a musician, and back to the music piece, like how important is it to focus on volume and dynamics when you're going to play?
I mean, volume and dynamics. You mean as far as like in the room, the sound room? I usually hope that there's somebody there that'll help me. I mean, I know roughly what I think I sound like, but I'm up here. I've got a little one speaker thing and a microphone and a guitar and a harmonica. I can't tell what I sound like over there. I can't walk over there and listen because I'm up here. And so I'm usually fortunate. There's usually somebody there that's called me to be there, and they may have some modicum of knowledge around it. But I'm always using my own rig, so I won't use other people's sound system unless they have a dedicated person. You know, if they say, oh, come here and you can use mine, well, if you've got a person working it, great. But otherwise, I know how to do mine, and I can set the volume. If they say, well, you're too loud, okay, I'll bring it down a little. But I usually use the first couple of songs to get that sense. I don't know. For me, that's still a learning thing. Some venues you can overpower the venue with a little Bose speaker. So, I mean, I played a little restaurant downtown, and it was tricky because they wanted it so quiet that I couldn't hear it over the noise of the restaurant. And
that's not fair to you as a musician. I'm sorry.
They paid me well. They gave me money. They fed my kids. They fed me. I took it in stride. They weren't used to doing live music, and I acknowledge that I'm spoiled
You know, and what I mean by spoiled is you have places like this. You have
This
places,
is nice, man.
You have places like the Mekong Bistro. You have places like the Blues Place downtown that have dialed the music in to where every performer is going to sound pretty darn amazing.
Yeah.
And so when I hear about venues that don't pay that much attention to the sound quality, I'm like, come on, this is a win-win for your artists.
But that I play places that don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I play Granges. I play street corners. I've been playing tomorrow morning. I'm playing, actually, folks, they won't hear it because I don't know when this goes live, probably in a couple of weeks, but tomorrow morning I'm playing a new place out in Bank. Well, new to me. It's the Sunset Highway Bar and Grill, and it's one of the last places where you can stop for breakfast before you hit Vernonia and the Coastal Range. But I'm playing there at 10 tomorrow morning, a Sunday morning show, for about an hour and some change. And I don't think they do a lot of live music out there. So I'll go in prepared to, they'll pay me what they pay me. And I'll sing for how long I sing, and I'll do whatever. And if they have me back, I'm looking for places where I can make some type of regular visit, whether it's monthly or quarterly or every other month. But, I'll take whatever. I'll play wherever. If a church wants me to come to Salem and do music on a Sunday, I'll go down and do music I go where I'm called. That's kind of how to be Ken in the world.
And then if you're thinking about like your performances and you wanted to let people know, what can you say people can experience if they come to see Ken play?
I mean, it's not just entertainment. I mean, I'm going to talk about life. I'm going to talk about my life. I'm going to talk about my journey. I have songs like Surprised by Joy, where I talk about, make a joyful noise and joy will find you. I have songs like Be Here Now, because every now is another chance. I mean, my music is about life. And when I would say that my ideal audience are people that are in some sort of recovery or working on a journey of neurodivergence, working on how to fit into a world that doesn't seem right-sized.
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much as somebody who's neurodivergent because, like, I don't think a lot of people realize how much some people rely on music to convey a message.
Music is a powerful tool for humans, and all we're doing is emulating nature and then adding ourselves to it. Right? We heard a rustling through the wind, and now we have woodwinds. We banged the rock against the log, and now music is an emulation of nature that involves us. And then we dance, and then we paint, and then we tell stories around fires. I mean, this is a part of being human.
And it's one of those things where the piece of being human, the part that I appreciate about music is because I know no matter what I'm going through, there's a song for that.
Absolutely. Or you could write one.
Yeah. But as at the same time, like I know, like if I'm feeling a certain way, I can access a song that helps me process. Mm-hmm. Because music is one of those strange anomalies, especially in the human race, where we can actually tell a story that can be absorbed by people all over the planet. Yeah. And it's like so sacred and special that it's one of those things that I don't think it'll ever go away. At the same time, like with the current power structure and how hard it is to exist as a musician, I'm afraid of the future of the industry.
I mean, I don't have fear about it. I think that everybody's been very nervous about AI and what it's going to do, right? AI will find its place. And people will use it. Just like, there was a time when all of the horse buggy whip manufacturers were really, really alarmed about cars and trains. But we find our way. We won't lose humans from music, and we won't lose humans from writing and from storytelling. We'll find ways to use these tools to support and enhance. And I think that the music industry and that whole thing, but I see myself more as a troubadour, more of a bard, more of a wandering through life telling stories to help people than I do a rock star trying to make bank, trying to sell records. I don't give a shit about selling. I have a live album, Live at the Village Inn Lounge. I have another live album that's in production that should be out soon. I've got a few studio songs, but I do that, and I put that all out there, and you put your bread on the water, right? But I do this to connect and to share my journey. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been at this for about an hour now.
Right.
So where can people go and find information about you and your music and your books?
So I have my website, of course, www.kenscholes.com. It's Scholes, like the village Scholes outside Leeds in the UK, where my people came from. And then if people really want to follow like where my shows are, at this point in time, I post them on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. That's been the best platform. I live stream on Facebook, so you want to catch some music, you want to hang out, chat a little, you can actually hang with me, and we talk music on Facebook when I'm doing my live streams. And then from there, I have events. I put up events for my gigs. I haven't been doing it lately because honestly, I was inviting 150 to 200 people to all of my gigs, and I wasn't seeing anything in years. I just don't think people are looking at Facebook events. I don't think people are following that. And I again, I care about making music for the people who are there. So I don't want to spend all my energy trying to get other people to be there. I do with the ones that show up. But I'd like to plant myself a few places where I know I'll build a local audience. I played the Village and Lounge for 4 years, and that became for those Friday nights, we had the civil servants, we had the librarians, we had the teachers. My Friday night at the Village Inn we had a good crew. And it takes a while of playing regularly in the right kind of venue to build a local audience. And I don't have a portable audience at this point. Now I might at some point, but yeah, I think that it comes down again to what is your career? My career is just being Ken.
And also telling the stories of your life in a very poetic way.
That's part of being Ken. There's no way to be Ken without doing that, because Ken's a writer. He's a poet. He's a singer. He's a songwriter. He's a giant flirt. He's a guy who, loves tacos and deep dish pizza. I mean, Ken loves to wander around and find an amazing diner in a small town that also has a great bar for playing some music, or maybe a nice little small farmer's market, and just hunker down in that community and hang out with folks for a couple days. But because of the back stuff, I've decided to stay in closer to home, and I'm doing that still once in a while. But what I'm really looking for now are the singer-songwriter cafes and places where I can, book the unusual gigs.
Yeah.
So.
And if you haven't come to this place, folks, you need to come check out Sing Acoustic. This place is something else.
It is, and I'm gonna do my utmost to land a gig here, because this place would be fun. This would be a fun place to play.
And I'll end the podcast the way I always end the podcast, folks. Be kind.
Yeah.
We all live on the same planet. We breathe the same air, and this world would just be a little bit better if we treated everybody with a little dignity and respect. Ken,
Amen. Thank you, Sean, for having me. I really appreciate it.